All right, metaphysical poetry. Metaphysical is kind of a big word. I don't quite understand that, and da-da-da-da-da. And just take a deep breath. It is not very difficult, and especially after you see, the language is somewhat easier to understand. It's more conversational. But the main aspect that we want to take away from this is it was written for people to really, you have to be real intelligent to get it. They wanted you to, people can understand it, but the smarter you were, the more you could get out of it, and that's who they were writing it for. It's important to keep these side by side with sonnets, in that sonnets were very rigid, very strict in number of syllables, number of lines. Your rhyme scheme must be a certain way. You had to play by a lot of different rules if you wanted to be considered a sonnet writer, a poet. Here, these guys were kind of considered the radicals. These people wanted to write poetry, but they didn't want to play by anybody's rules. They wanted to make up their own game, their own rules, and play by those. And so that's what they ultimately did. And John Donne was really the father of that. Highly complex, extended metaphors. You guys hear metaphors all the time comparing something. But the main thing that's interesting about these are they're called extended. They're really in-depth sometimes. It's not just something is like this or something seems to be like this and then they move on. It's more in-depth, more elaborate. They might go into greater detail. The word conceit, that should be a lit term that's on your list. If not, that we'll want to get on there before the test. But conceit is what's called an extended metaphor. I'll show you a couple of examples today in his poem, and that should make a little bit more sense to you. But understand that that's really kind of the main, one of the main features of metaphysical poetry. Avoidance of smooth or regular meter, that smooth or regular, that iambic pentameter, the ba-boom, 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 smooth and regular, and it flows and sounds fine. Sometimes, even though we'll be able to understand these words, sometimes, it's a shorter line, a bigger line, a medium line, a bigger line. It's not the same. And that's understandable since these guys didn't want to play by those rules of the earlier poets. The unconventional imagery, that's we don't typically describe things in a certain way, and you'll see that play out here. The bottom of 428, when it talks about Donne's tone, is less formal, and his word choice is simpler than those of most Elizabethan poets. But his verse makes far greater demands on the reader's intellect. That's the thing you got to remember. This is for the smart people to get. Could the dumb ones get it? Well, they might be able to read it and understand a little bit. But he wants you to think about that metaphor and like, how is that really like, oh, okay, I guess I can see it. They want you to really challenge yourself to get the understanding. So while it's easy to read and easy to comprehend, you need to be able to, to think in order to get the true meaning, is what they're saying. His poetry often includes an elaborate metaphor, a witty argument, or a complex philosophical speculation. The one we're going to read about, called Valediction, forbidding mourning. A husband is getting ready to travel away, and the wife has a bad dream, and she doesn't want him to leave. And so he writes her this poem that says, I'm going to go away, but I'll come back, and blah, blah, and we'll talk more about that. But we still see, some sort of love. And we, as you read about John Donne on the other page, he's a very, very religious individual. And so a lot of what we'll read in his poem is faith-based with regards to I'm not really worrying about what happens in his life because I'll be taken care of, and so on. The bullet points, 428 and 429, those are the things you really want to make sure you understand. I have put a PowerPoint on metaphysical poetry on Moodle. I believe there is a slide or two that has a side-by-side comparison of what makes a sonnet, and a metaphysical poetry, how they differ and such. So you will want to take some time to look at that in your studying. But really, these next two columns and so forth are really the essence of what makes a metaphysical poetry a metaphysical poem. We had the argument, the intellectual, The conceits, which are those extended metaphors. Elizabethan poets were fond of conceits, elaborate extended metaphors. Often these conceits compared the beauty of a woman to the beauty of a natural object, such as a star. We read a lot of that. The one about Shakespeare describing his woman to something else, or she wasn't like that. They compare it to, oh, you're as beautiful as blah, blah, blah. Here with metaphysical, they take it to a whole different level, and sometimes they're like, what? What? I don't, well, think about it and really delve into it, and that's where they want that intellect to come out. The metaphysical poets took the use of conceits a significant step further, creating arresting comparisons between very dissimilar objects or ideas that demand thought and imagination to unravel. And that's a couple of examples we'll see. Look at what they have here. They talk about that Donne compares the tears on a man's face to newly minted coins. Tears to coins. I mean, we probably would understand, to dew or a waterfall, some rain, obviously some water to water, but compare that to newly minted coins. Maybe and without reading the rest of the poem, we can't really guess, but, throwing things out there, newly minted coin, shiny, crisp, clear, a tear that comes down might catch the sun, it might shine like a newly minted coin. I don't know, we'd have to see it in its context. But they want you to have to really think about it.